Hello and welcome to Hardman Talks. I'm Larissa Adams and I'm joined by Keith Hiscock, our CEO at Hardman & Co. Keith, welcome. Good to have you. How are you?
Good to be here. Thank you.
Great. So I guess we're very excited to hear from you as you'll be discussing your latest thought piece on the October 2024 Labour budget, which focused on tax increases, particularly targeting employers to address a 22 billion fiscal gap. But a lot of these measures we know have raised concerns about business confidence, job losses, and economic growth. So it's really great to hear your input on all of this. So I think to start off with, Keith, you've called your piece the October 2024 budget. We got it wrong. So can you expand on this? What exactly did you get wrong?
Okay, so the piece we wrote focused on the impact there might be on investors. Why did we do that? Well, because the new Labour government had ruled out tax increases in lots of other areas. So there weren't going to be any tax increases for what they called the working people, without quite defining what those are. And they'd already ruled out corporation tax changes. So there wasn't much left that they could put up to cover the 22 billion black hole that they'd allegedly found. And so we thought it's going to be investors are going to be bearing the brunt of it. Now, as we're going to go on to discuss, there has been some impact on investors, but the big impact is on employers and the change in employers' national insurance contributions. And what they've done is we'll go on to talk about, undermine the prospects in the job market. And for a government that talked about fixing the foundations, we're all going to be adults, sensible, etc., and whose main aim was growth, they seem to have achieved exactly the opposite in the budget.
Mm. Okay, and in the note you talk about unforced errors. What exactly are they?
Well, I think the contrast is that generally budgets, economic circumstances dictate what happens. Prime Minister from the 50s and 60s, Harold Macmillan, when asked about, what you've got to respond to, etc., said, "Events, my dear boy, events." This government seems to have created a number of issues of its own making. I call them unforced errors. So, for example, in the lead up to that budget at the end of October, they effectively talked the economy down. They told us how tough things were going to be, how tough they were going to have to make some tough decisions, all that sort of stuff. And it sapped confidence, business confidence, ahead of the budget. The second thing that they did wrong was to give themselves very little room for manoeuvre on the taxes that they could change. I've already alluded to that. And so they created a problem for themselves by ruling out more than half the tax base that they would tackle. The next thing is, by taxing jobs, they are going to impact working people. The next unforced error is early on, they gave some quite substantial pay rises in the public sector without anything in return, without any commitment to productivity, better working, etc., like that. So Labour governments in the past have got themselves into trouble on profligate public spending, and this seems to be following the same route. And then the final thing is they came up with a fiscal plan whereby they were only going to borrow money to undertake investment in the public sector, not for current spending. Now, when you put these plans together, you put in some wiggle room in case things go wrong. And it looks as though that very small reserve, and every other time economists commented on how small that reserve has probably already been used up. So that's why our theme is that a lot of what is going wrong in the UK economy at the moment is because of unforced errors. These things didn't need to happen, but from the measures taken largely in the budget by the Labour government.
Mm. And what do you think these effects will be from all
Well,
of this?
I talked already about business confidence has slumped. Jobs are being lost because if you look at what the measures were on national insurance, it was to put the rate of national insurance up from 13.9 to 15%. But the starting point, which is a salary starting point per employee or remuneration per employee, has been cut dramatically. So it's going to, in particular, be lower paid jobs that are going to be most affected. And you can see already employers are laying off people. You know, Sainsbury's is closing all of its cafes, Morrison's doing the same, etc., etc. There's a lot of that going on. Other effects will be none of this is going to help growth. It's going to do exactly the opposite. And the Labour government, when it came in, talked about fixing the foundations and said, well, it's growth that's the key to everything, because with growth, we can afford better public services, more spending, more investment, etc. Well, without growth, they can't do any of that. And the worries around this and the worries about how much they might need to borrow has pushed up interest rates, but pushed up the rate that they've had to pay for debt and that they will have to pay for debt in the future. And that itself has an impact across the economy, because it's going to delay the pace at which interest rates might otherwise have come down. It's going to have caused inflation as well. So it's not looking great, I'm afraid, as a background for the UK economy.
Yeah. I think let's maybe end off by talking about investors. So were there any changes for investors in particular?
There were a bit of tinkering. So we were right to say there wouldn't be any changes in what are known as tax advantaged assets, i.e. EIS, Enterprise Investment Scheme, SEIS, and venture capital trusts, and that was right. There were some changes in inheritance tax. So the relief for holdings of qualifying AIM shares was halved. People had thought that might be completely abolished, but it was halved. The aggregate amount you can claim for relief at death in business property relief and agricultural relief was capped. Well, not capped, but the first million, only the first million attracts 100% relief, and then only 50% above that. The farmers are protesting about that, for example. And then, although this hasn't yet come in, the ability to pass on what's left in your pension fund outside IHT has also been ended. So inheritance tax has been impacted. And then finally, capital gains tax has been a bit of tinkering with capital gains tax rates, and essentially the rates have gone up. So they have done things, and again, none of that's really going to be helpful to growth in the economy.
All right, Keith, thank you so much. That was really, really insightful. To our viewers, if you'd like to read Keith's full note on the budget, head over to our website. We've got the link in the description below. Otherwise, please do like and comment on our video wherever you're watching. Every piece of engagement does help. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. But thanks for watching, and see you next time.